Hello, 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 my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds. My goodness, we have 4 friends here already. Wow. Welcome. Sorry, it's been a busy day. Got my glasses. How's everybody? Ooh, I just smudged my glasses. How's everyone doing this lovely Thursday night? Hi, Chi Chi Kiki. Welcome, welcome. Oh my goodness. I think I am just making this worse. Yeah, how's everyone doing tonight? Almost Friday. I am finally feeling better. I am so happy about that. Because when you aren't feeling well, especially when it's with your stomach, it is the worst. I'm so glad to hear that you are doing well. That you're good, Chi Chi Kiki. And I am excited to read the last chapters. Thank you so much. Me too. It literally was 12 days of being nauseous, especially in the morning. And no, it's not pregnancy. Then at least it'd be worth it. But no, just some sort of crazy stomach bug flu thing that just would not leave. But I am thankfully finally feeling human again. So it's a nice thing, and it really makes you appreciate just a normal day. But anyway, logistics. Welcome to my live stream. I am Rosebud Reads, and this is my book garden. Actually, this is my basement, but it has books in it, so I think it counts. As you can tell, this is a pretty chill live stream, which, if that's not your flavor, I hope that you may stick around anyway and just give it a chance. But if not, I totally understand, and that's okay. I do not own any of Golden Terrace. The only thing I own are the physical copy in front of me and my time. So please don't come after me. I am doing this purely because, as well as just to get these books out there. A lot of people don't have access right now, and I think it's important that you should be able to have access to something without having to pay through the teeth. So, enjoy! We are going to be covering chapters 37 through 44, which is the end of book 1. So we will actually be starting on volume 2 next week. The cover will look the same. I think I'll probably restart like the 1, 2, 3, but it'll probably be in the sweatshirt, so it'll look different. I might see if I can edit the picture and put like a volume 2 in there, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't have my tea today, but we'll see if kombucha works just as well. I was busy up until a little bit ago, so I didn't have time to make tea. We'll see what happens, and we will see what happens. But where we left off. So Fu Shen had just saved the emperor. And we're kind of seeing how he feels about this at the end of last chapter. They were talking about the empress and how she had cuckolded the emperor. And the emperor kind of picked up on that and had her die via a cup of poisoned wine. They announced that she simply lost too much blood and died despite receiving treatment. But Fu Shen was smarter than that. And told him that Fu Shen told him that he had an inside man. And Fu Shen was also just kind of feeling like he was not the brightest at the moment in the longevity festival because he was like, damn you instincts! You saved the emperor. The emperor that's causing you all of this trouble. And shit. Damn it! The last line from last time was Fu Shen had suddenly realized that he was in fact the biggest clown in this whole farce. With that, we start chapter 37. Tell the truth. The ambush in Kingshaw Gap, the attack on the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission. Did the Jin Wu Guard do that on His Majesty's orders? Fu Shen agreed and calmly said, You could get there by guesswork. He felt Yan Xiaohan's hand tighten abruptly on his. He laughed softly. I know what you want to say. Even if he died mad, he would deserve it, right? But Yan Xiang, he said a little unhappily, no one got to where he is in a single step. His Majesty is old now, paranoid and jealous, credulous of slander. But he wasn't like this before. Though the Duke of Ying Manor has declined, it remains a colossus, and there are still the Beiyuan cavalry and the Marquis of Jinning Manor. Without His Majesty, the present Fu family wouldn't exist, never mind me. In the second year of Yun Tai, when His Majesty was newly enthroned, there was turbulence in the north. My grandfather was transferred to the post of military commissioner of Ganshao, I was right. And His Majesty gave him all the support he needed, military power, provisions, soldiers' pay. He nearly emptied out the national treasury, which hadn't been very abundant to begin with. That was what was needed to pacify the north. My father, my second uncle, the mainstays serving in the Beiyuan army now, and many generals who have been scattered to all the borders grew up during that war. Just after you and I were born, the empire entered a period of stability and prosperity. I cannot ignore my conscience and say that it was all done through the Fu family's contributions over the years. Yan Xiaohan gave an ambiguous laugh. Fu Shen could hear his disagreement, but Yan Xiaohan didn't refute him, only indicated for him to continue speaking. He was once a wise emperor, Fu Shen said. On the day he conferred the marriage, you asked why I didn't simply revolt. I told you then that I could not allow the heroic reputation of the Beiyuan army to be destroyed overnight. There was another reason I did not tell you. Today you've seen for yourself. Actually, I couldn't bring myself to do it. So I can only take my revenge on him with unworthy means and can't even resist saving him. Even if I must be a whore, I will still raise a memorial arch. Hearing this, Yan Xiaohan immediately smacked the side of his waist gently and said in warning, Don't talk nonsense. Just as long as you understand me, Fu Shen said. Everything I have was given to me by His Majesty. Now he wants to take it back and is afraid that I won't be willing to let go. It was an ordinary alteration. The country was the same country it had always been, but the human hearts within it were no longer the human hearts of past acquaintances. He couldn't go on. However close Yan Xiaohan was to him, he couldn't feel what he felt after all. The tangle of contradictions, the repeated variations, made even Fu Shen himself feel vexed. Never mind that, to the eyes of another, this perhaps looked like a kind of blind devotion on his part. Fu Shen raised his head in astonishment, almost thinking that Yan Xiaohan had suddenly gone crazy. Then he was pulled into an embrace. Not an affectionate hug between adults, but a hug of completely unmasked doting and love, like coddling a child. Jing Yuan, do you know what you're like? Yan Xiaohan kissed the top of his head and held back laughter, said to Fu Shen, who had "You're nuts" written all over his face. "Oh, hi, Mars Rover. Welcome to the stream." We basically just started. Basically, Fu Shen said, like, even if he's kind of an ass right now, doing all this shit, I still can't kill him. Like, he built my family up and he did help this nation. Even though now he's not. He's declining. Alright. Jing Yuan, do you know what you're like? Yan Xiaohan kissed the top of his head and held back laughter, said to Fu Shen, who had "You're nuts" written all over his face. A good child who's never done anything bad, who suddenly does a bad thing one day, and feels guilty about it, then owns up to everything himself, before anyone can even ask. Fu Shen really wanted to kick him. That tactless scoundrel Yan Xiaohan couldn't resist laughing again. Listen, isn't it exhausting being an upright gentleman? After all's said and done, it's simply that you hate him for being suspicious but can't change your deep-seated loyal disposition. If I were in your place, I wouldn't have any misgivings. After all, I'm a crafty sycophant, ready to swap allegiances at any moment. I can raise waves without even wind, never mind when people choose to provoke me. Fu Shen said, Of course I'm not like you. Yan Xiaohan said, Then are you a sage? Fu Shen said, Why do I feel like you're just mocking me from a new angle? Not at all, Yan Xiaohan said. Since you aren't me, why should you seek vengeance over petty offenses like a craven villain? And since you aren't a sage, why force yourself to require insult with virtue, to be totally selfless? No one can force you to take revenge. Whether you are willing to take it up or let it go depends entirely on your own will. Or, if you aren't willing to do it yourself, there's no problem in letting me do it for you. Besides, even a lump of earth still has some temper. When His Majesty has played such a dirty trick on you, what's wrong with hating him? No matter what the dynasty or era, injuring a loyal general out of doubt and suspicion isn't the conduct of a wise ruler. When a person has done wrong, he must be ready to accept the penalty. It's unreasonable to expect the injured party to absolve him. Fu Shen had never before heard him hold forth at such length. He felt that it was a little novel. He had no way of refuting it. Yan Xiaohan put a hand under his chin and, smiling, said, Lord Marquise, at 16 you dared to crow, His Majesty is wrong. Why are you now so cautious, keeping your head down? Events of the past were like a surging tide, connected to distant memories on the horizon. Fu Shen's throat stung. Don't let yourself be bound hand and foot by loyalty and righteousness. Yan Xiaohan bent his head to kiss him. His voice was soft, but every word seemed to slam against Fu Shen's heart. Dare to love, dare to hate, take pleasure in gratitude and vengeance. Jing Yuan, no one but you can fetter you. He had watched Fu Shen's figure disappear into the distance time and again, seen him grow from a boy to a young man, go from general to noble, his triumphant will constantly worn down by the wind and sand. Praise and censure had come in endless waves, but the responsibility he shouldered had never been put down. Sometimes Yan Xiaohan wished he was as deranged as rumor had it. He wanted to seal away the 16-year-old Fu Shen, stop him forever at the age when he had known no suffering, or else, as on the day the marriage was bestowed, miraculously watch all that he had believed in, relied upon, and protected be overturned and collapse, so he could no longer be an upright gentleman and be henceforth freed of his shackles. All unreachable phantasms were the projections of the world's most helpless wishes. Yan Xiaohan lost control rarely and was clear-headed much of the time. While clear-headed, he could say to Fu Shen, "In my heart, you are above all others. No one else compares." But it was only when he lost control that he dared to admit that when Fu Shen had donned his armor and gone into battle, setting foot on the path of the loyal general, it had been one of the two great instances of helplessness in his life. In this world, being a loyal official was not only bitter, it was also fatal. He had never expected that somehow, by some quirk of fate, he and this person would one day be a loving couple. Though Fu Shen had to stay in a wheelchair, he was still one of the thorny weapons of the mortal world, not to be offended lightly. But tonight, when he was pulled from his gloom into a warm entanglement, an almost elusive satisfaction grew in Yan Xiaohan's chest in a daze, as if he had at last managed to spread his wings and honestly embrace the person he most wanted to protect. Breathing intertwined, lips and teeth locked together, heartbeats gradually synchronized. Fu Shen's finger gently smoothed the lines of his slightly damp jet-black hair. It was unclear who was actually comforting whom. The night was fleeting. Fu Shen didn't know when he fell asleep. When he woke, Yan Xiaohan had already left. It was mid-morning, the breeze gentle and the sun warm, the quilt still pleasantly warm. He had had a rare, comfortable, and contented night of peaceful sleep. The chaos of yesterday's vast longevity feast and the depression he had nowhere to vent seemed to be things of the distant past. Many things, while one was hung up on them, were as huge as the sky. Once one had gotten past them, though, the realization came that there wasn't all that much to them. But the most important thing was that there was a person willing to use the utmost patience to stay beside him, untangle his knotted thoughts for him without finding him nuisance, try to understand his perhaps entirely useless and senseless, undulating emotions. How hard on Yan Xiaohan, a court lackey roundly cursed by the scholar, to also have to endure the humiliation of trying to comprehend the thoughts of loyal officials. I mean, that's kind of a little bit relationship goals. Like, that's kind of a very healthy relationship, in all honesty. Like, they're working through their issues together. So I gotta respect that. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Before lunch, a eunuch came from the palace to convey an imperial decree. The Marquise of Jinning had performed a meritorious. They are an A+ down makeup. Absolutely. I hope they stay A+. Like, I mean, let's be fair, we all enjoy some toxic yaoi now and again. Toxic Danmei, we know which ones those are. But, like, it's kind of refreshing to see an actually healthy relationship now and again. The Marquise of Jinning had performed a meritorious service in saving the Emperor's life. His Majesty, in commendation of his loyalty, was bestowing upon him several cases of medicinal ingredients, gold and silver, precious gems, and other such articles. There was also a verbal instruction specially sent, asking him to mention any reward he might want. Fu Shen considered briefly, turned to look at Yan Manor's main gate, and laughed. Loyalty one's sovereign and protection of one's nation are a subject's duty. I am ashamed to receive His Majesty's generous grant. His Majesty's favor is vast. How could I dare to be greedy for more? I have only one presumptuous request that I ask you to communicate, eunuch. All smiles, the eunuch said. Name it, Lord Marquis. Fu Shen seriously said, At the vast longevity festival yesterday, the Fei Long Guard was acting in the capacity of bodyguard, protecting His Majesty's safety. But a cunning malefactor nearly brought about disaster. As the head of the Fei Long Guard, my humble wife can hardly escape censure. Husband and wife are as one in body and mind. I hope that His Majesty will permit me to balance my achievement against his error and forgive my humble wife the fault of his inadequate protection. There they go with the wife thing again. It was as if a bolt out of the blue had struck the roof of Yan Manor. Even the eunuch was dazed. He nearly thought he was hearing things. White-faced, he asked, Lord Marquis, what did you say? Fu Shen said, smiling. Was I unclear? Perfectly clear, perfectly clear. Beads of sweat poured off the eunuch. He felt as if he had heard a tremendous secret and would be silenced by Yan Xiaohan that night. Watching the eunuch who had delivered the decree run away in a hurry, Fu Shen carelessly turned and met the eyes of the dumbstruck maids and pages in the courtyard. What are you looking at me for? Is it really so moving? He said unflappably. Don't blame me for being soft-hearted. It's that your master was really so worried about it. He spent half of last night weeping in my arms. They just really love to mess with each other. Fu Shen had the cases carried away while he went to eat lunch with an easy conscience. After eating his meal, he needed to digest. Fu Shen remembered that Yan Manor was not far from Qingchu Temple. The Taoist priest's arrival really had been peculiar. Couldn't resist being curious, so he had Du Lang push him out for a stroll in its vicinity. The formerly flourishing temple had already become deserted. There was desolation everywhere in Qingchu Temple, with visitors few and far between. To prevent anyone from escaping the net, Yan Xiaohan had assigned a team of imperial guards to stand watch here. By a great coincidence, leading them was Wei Shushao, the wife, General Wei, whom Fu Shen had met once. General Wei was extremely sophisticated concerning the ways of the world. At first, he had also thought that Yan Xiaohan and Fu Shen weren't suited to each other. But from Yan Xiaohan's attitude after the wedding, he could clearly tell that Yan Xiaohan's attitude towards Fu Shen was remarkable. Whether Fu Shen felt the same was hard to say, but their Lord Yan certainly valued the Marquis of Jinning quite highly. Seeing Fu Shen coming, he was inwardly speechless while outwardly welcoming him. His manner remained amiable, and he even voluntarily offered to let Fu Shen go in. Fu Shen still remembered his first meeting with him. Wei Shushou hadn't been so cordial then. In spite of himself, he smiled and said, Aren't you afraid that I'm the assassin's accomplice, General Wei? What are you saying, Lord Marquis? Wei Shushou said immediately. You're one of our own. Fu Shen lowered his eyes and smiled, repeating, One of our own. The two old foxes seemed to each have acquired the information he wanted from the riddle-like dialogue. They smiled at each other. Wei Shushou made an inviting gesture, and Fu Shen nodded to him slightly in acknowledgement. He said, Then I'll impose on you. Du Lang, let's go. Hoo. I wonder what's in the temple. I believe secrets. The only thing about kombucha is it's probably going to make me burp, so I apologize in advance for that. Chapter 38. The layout of Qingshu Temple was similar to other ordinary Taoist temples. The buildings were symmetrically arranged along the central axis, with the Hall of the Taoist Trinity as its main hall, statues of three divine teachers consecrated within it, behind it four reception halls, an altar, a clock tower, and so on. The whole temple wasn't on an especially large scale, but with quiet winding paths amid lush, verdant trees, it opened up a tranquil universe in this world. Dulang pushed Fushen slowly along the uneven stone path, as if they were two of the most ordinary worshippers possible. The Feilong guard had already searched this compound from the inside out. Fushen couldn't tell anything new from it and was only using this as a place to collect his thoughts. In fact, there was still a doubt in his mind that he had never mentioned to anyone else, yet which weighed heavily on his mind at every moment. Sorry. It was the box of blood-splattered Eastern pearls that Yu Xiaoting had brought him the day after he and Yan Xiaohan were married. Fushen had had him take it away and deal with it, but he had never forgotten that incident. No detail related to the Z clan was trivial. Those old opponents had been eyeing him hungrily from start to finish. Though they seemed to have been pacified, in secret they were sharpening their claws, hibernating while waiting for a chance to launch a fatal attack. Fushen, casting off the position of Beiyuan commander and returning to the capital to convalesce, had no doubt given them hope, even giving them the guts to take this opportunity to probe forward. But after all this time, they had yet to strike. They must have been worried that this was a ruse put together by Great Zhou's sovereign and official working in concert. The Beiyuan cavalry was certainly not unprepared. The only thing that made Fushen uneasy was that he had no clear idea of how many spies the Z clan had in the capital. Had they been involved in the death of the Jinwu Guard and the assassination attempt at the vast longevity festival? Had the box of Eastern pearls been pure provocation, or had it been some meaningful hint? Eastern pearls were a jewel of ultimate value for the Z clan. Apart from the tribute they paid to Great Zhou, within their own clan, only the wives and mothers of their leaders, equivalent to the empresses and empress dowagers of Central Plains, were qualified to wear them. Therefore, the Z often used Eastern pearls to represent an empress, and the empress had just happened to suffer an attack on the day of the vast longevity festival. Was that a coincidence? Making surface-level associations, a golden pill and an Eastern pearl were similar in form. That was also very suspicious, and the name of the Eastern pearls contained the word Eastern. Could that be hinting at the Crown Prince's Eastern Palace, which had taken the greatest damage from this? After a while of thinking wildly like this, the wheelchair seemed to roll over a small rock. Fushen was jolted and came back from his musings. He looked up and asked doubtfully, "Where is this?" "I don't know either," Zhu Lang said awkwardly. "I think I've gotten us lost." "Brilliant," Fushen said with a mocking laugh. He pointed at random. "Let's go that way. Place is only so big. You can get out with your eyes closed. Isn't that a little building up ahead?" Dulang was so humiliated he didn't dare to make a peep. He gloomily pushed Fushen in that direction. The two of them stopped in front of the 3-floor little building. Fushen smirked with interest and said curiously, "A scripture library? And so out of the way, for that matter." They had passed by many halls. While Fushen had been lost in thought along the way, he could still work out that they were probably in one of the corners within Qingshu Temple. The location of this scripture library was remote, very far from the wing where the Taoist priest lived, and concealed behind a bit of a stretch of forest. It seemed as if people rarely came here. It was very hard to find. Would people really come here to read scripture? Let's go in and have a look. With great difficulty, Dulang got Fu Shen and the wheelchair up the stairs. He was so tired he was panting. We can't go in. There's a lock on the door. Fu Shen went over and took a look, and then said, a trifle. Saying so, with a flick of the wrist, he pulled a small knife out from somewhere, and in a flash had pried open the brass lock on the door. When he gave a push, the wooden double doors fell wide open. The smell of old paper mixed with dust hit them in the face. Dulang was speechless. Fu Shen's hands were too quick. Dulang hadn't even seen his movements clearly. That big, heavy brass lock was like a toy in his hands. Most importantly, he was an invalid. Why could he pull out a knife just like that? It's just his legs. His hands were fine. There was dust everywhere in the library. Puffing and blowing again, Dulang carried the wheelchair over the threshold. He was a doctor. He really couldn't effortlessly heft the marquise up to the second floor like it was nothing, like those military men. Forget it. Close the door. Fu Shen really didn't have the heart to continue. Leaning against the arms of the wheelchair, he stood up. I'll walk by myself. The state of his injury was really very delicate. The kneecaps had shattered entirely and the tendons had been damaged, but it wasn't bad enough that he couldn't stand up. With proper recuperation, there was hope that he would make a full recovery in the future. But, for the time being, he really couldn't walk as usual. Even when the wounds healed, he wouldn't be able to spend long periods at the front as he had when he was in perfect health. The awkwardness came from the Emperor having a spy in the army. There had been no way to conceal the news of Fu Shen's injury. His Majesty had immediately issued a decree ordering him to return to the capital to convalesce. Fu Shen had already known that he feared him, but he hadn't expected him to be so impatient. He certainly couldn't tell His Majesty the news that he had hopes of making a full recovery, or else he might not survive a whole month in the capital. He could only meet the plot with plot, exaggerate the severity of his injury, prioritize preserving his life. The crippled appearance was put on entirely for His Majesty's benefit. Fu Shen's bones were in fact mostly healed. He could stand up and walk for a while without problems. It was just that he normally had to pretend in front of others. He couldn't slip up. Dulang knew his real condition and had even mixed up a medicine to make his crippled performance more realistic. Taking it made a person's legs lose strength and sensation. The results were outstanding. Even Shen Yise had been tricked by them. Dulang turned and shut the door and uneasily extorted, Slow down. You haven't been walking lately. Take care not to fall. Do your legs still hurt? A little. Nothing serious. Fu Shen carefully found his balance and slowly, leaning against the wall, walked through the bookshelves standing as numerous as trees in the forest. No one has been here for a long time, and no one has swept, but the steps at the door are very clean, as if people come here often. Strange. Dulang followed him, pushing the wheelchair. Fu Shen went up to the second floor and took a turn through it. Seeing that there was nothing here but ragged texts, he put them back without interest. But when he walked to the end of the room, he suddenly gave a very quiet, "Oh?" Dulang didn't understand what was happening. Fu Shen walked back and forth around the room several times, then frowned and said, "Come downstairs." The two of them returned to the first floor, and he once again walked back and forth several times. Fushen tapped on each of the 4 walls in turn. Du Lang, seeing his brow tightly furrowed, couldn't resist asking, "General, what is it?" "It's wrong," Fushen said. "Haven't you felt it? The second-floor room seems to be bigger than the first floor." Du Lang shook his head in confusion. Fushen said, "Count how many steps it takes to get from the door to this wall, then go to the second floor and count following the same path." Du Lang did as he said. Shortly, he ran back in a hurry from the second floor, astonishment on his face. He said, "There's at least one extra step on the second floor. Could it be?" Fushen put up a finger in a silencing gesture. He quietly instructed, "Go find General Wei. Tell him to bring a few people and bring some damp firewood." "Oh, I think I know what they're gonna do. Just like Hey, bringing up bees and Danmei again. I'm gonna smoke them out." Inside the interrogation office of the North Prison, Chunyang Dao Shang had yet to say a single word. In order to extract a confession, Yan Xiaohan and Tang Guo had spent nearly all day in the interrogation room. Someone hurriedly came in from outside and quietly said something to Yan Xiaohan. Understood. Yan Xiaohan turned his head and said to Tang Guo, "Dr. Shen needs me for something. You look after this for a while. I'm going out." Tang Guo's eyes lit up when he had heard the words, "Dr. Shen," but when he found that it was nothing to do with him, he nodded glumly. Potential second couple? Yan Xiaohan greeted him, gestured with his chin at the prisoner hung up inside the cell and added, "It may have something to do with him. Take it easy. Don't beat him to death." The North Prison was only a few steps from the Feilong Guards depot. As soon as Yan Xiaohan walked in, Shen Yusei swirled towards him like a tornado. "Your Honor, there's a lead. It's Qingshu Temple. Those people who died in the saddle, including Yang Hexuan, their paths did cross. Those people all went to Qingshu Temple." "What?" Yan Xiaohan jumped when he came over. "What did you say?" "Slow down. Start from the beginning. What's going on?" Shen Yusei was so excited that his face was red. "I've spent the last few days trying to work out what that drug in Yan Hexuan's bag was. So I visited the family members of the victims. Well, their homes are scattered throughout the city. If you mark them on a map and compare them, you can see that their residences almost form a circle, with the area of Qingshu Temple at the center." He spread out a map of the capital, indicating for Yan Xiaohan to look at the ink marks as well. Qingshu Temple has always had a name for effectiveness. People come in droves to light incense there. The people coming and going on each festival day and auspicious day are innumerable. Naturally, no one would notice that all those people had gone to the same place. I asked the families of the victims. Those people really did go to Qingshu Temple periodically to light incense. They often gave donations to the temple. As soon as those people showed symptoms of headache or mild fever, they would go to the temple to request talismans to be dissolved in water and elixirs, which would cure their illness as soon as they took them. If there really was such an effective medicine, what use would us doctors be? It's obvious that those people were having cravings, and they could only get the drug by going to Qingshu Temple. Once the sequence of cause and effect was tied together, the overall shape of the matter became much clearer. Shen Yusei said, "Because the palace thinks highly of the celestial way, the people also worship it. So no one thought that there was anything particularly meaningful about this. Qingshu Temple took advantage of this prevailing attitude to secretly sell that drug. There's no need to speak of Yang Hexuan. Chun Yang Daoshang was recommended by his father. Yan Xiaohan muttered briefly to himself with his eyes fixed on the map, then decisively stood and said, "Come on, we're going to Qingshu Temple." When he hurriedly arrived at Qingshu Temple with some subordinates and heard that Fu Shen and Shao were both in the scripture library inside, Yan Xiaohan's right eyelid suddenly twitched uncomfortably. Mr. Vinegar Jar. An indescribable emotion assaulted his heart. He had no time to think it over. He charged swiftly towards the scripture library with his people. Before they came near it, they already saw from afar the billowing smoke rising into the sky. Fu Shen! Fu Shen! Fu Shen! Fu Shen turned his head abruptly just in time to meet his frightened and furious, humble wife racing towards him. At the same time, a loud clatter suddenly came from the smoke-filled scripture library. Then the double doors were kicked open from inside, and a black figure, coughing again and again, covering his nose and mouth, charged out. Yan Xiaohan had just reached Fu Shen and had yet to come to a full stop. But he saw Fu Shen, lightning quick, pull Yan Xiaohan's sword from his waist and, without so much as turning his head, throw the sword backhanded. Like a bolt of white silk, the most dazzling light flashed, and with a clang the sword nailed that person to the pillars with a couple carved into them. A subordinate brought a bucket of water and poured it over the constantly smoking damp firewood nearby. The flames were extinguished with a thump, and curling white steam spread outward, revealing the faces of the people in the courtyard, each wearing a different expression. Amid a dead silence, Fu Shen took Yan Xiaohan's hand, icy with fright, and gently swung it. The gesture seemed comforting, and also had a trace of something like ingratiating himself with a job well done. "Look, there's a fish that slipped the net. I helped you catch him." I think I really enjoy them as people too, because they're just really smart. We love competent characters. Chapter 39. Yan Xiaohan's heart wouldn't stop beating wildly. That feeling of putting a foot wrong and losing his balance had yet to dissipate altogether. He glared at Fu Shen, so angry he stuttered, "You..." Fu Shen's manner was very kind, very tender. "Yes, go on." Yan Xiaohan did not. The saying went that you shouldn't hit a person who had already apologized, and that applied especially to a lofty beauty, rarely willing to give people face, like Fu Shen. Yan Xiaohan yewed for ages, but still didn't manage to get a second word out. The dignity of the master of the house had completely hit rock bottom, so his towering rage changed course. He gave Wei Shushou a thorough scolding. "Why was there still someone in here? I told you to dig deep, not overlook so much as a rat hole. How did you handle things? I sent you to take some people to watch Qingshu Temple, and what did you do, huh? You've been making mischief with him." Yan Shushou, or Wei Shushou, was deeply aggrieved. You what?" Yan Xiaohan said sternly. "What if it hadn't been one person hiding in there, but a whole band of villains? Were you and your Peniente force going to offer yourselves up for slaughter? And you," having finally recovered his momentum in scolding, he turned to Fu Shen, "going into danger alone? Before you went and made mischief, why didn't you stop to think about your position? These aren't ordinary petty pilferers. They're desperate criminals who dared to attempt an assassination on His Majesty inside the Imperial Palace. If it had really come to a fight, with you unable to get around easily and these people hardly able to protect themselves, who would have been able to protect you?" He was truly angry. Everyone in the vicinity involuntarily hunched their shoulders. Fu Shen said sincerely, "My wife's lecture is correct. I'll be sure to be careful in the future. I won't do it again." Yan Xiaohan felt that Fu Shen hadn't heard half a word of it. His acknowledgment of wrongdoing was purely to humor a child. He was so angry his chest hurt, so he simply threw off Fu Shen's hand and shot him a cold glance. He said, "Crown." Having said this, he proceeded to ignore him. Or clown, not crown. I was like, crown? What? He called him a clown. Having said this, he proceeded to ignore him and walk straight towards the black-clothed man nailed to the pillar. Fu Shen hadn't been told off in public for many years. He was stunned. His wrist remained hanging in the air, still in the posture of grabbing someone's hand. He unconsciously curled his fingers. As if suddenly waking with a start, he drew his hand back in front of his chest and fixed his eyes somewhat helplessly on Yan Xiaohan's back. Aw. I mean, he's right to be upset, but oh. His impression was that he had practically never seen Yan Xiaohan truly angry. He was usually patient and restrained, and even when he was angry, he wouldn't vent it at him. Fu Shen suddenly realized that he was the one always being humored, believing himself blameless in the face of heaven, earth, and his own heart, always waiting for another to admit error and apologize so he could either take the opportunity to be lenient or ruthlessly make a clean break. Even if he was doing the humoring, he would never humble himself, only use sweet words and jokes to smooth the situation. But when the day came that the accommodating person was no longer accommodating, the indulgent person was no longer indulgent, there was no place for his glib tongue to be put to use. He finally learned the taste of being cast aside. Oof. The whole scene was embarrassing, and no one was concerned about the person who had charged out of the scripture library. The people who knew the inside story were inwardly anxious, and the person who didn't know the truth were saying to themselves that these two people indeed didn't get along. Fu Shen had yet to decide how to handle the situation, but the matter was passed, and the Feilong Guard was investigating a case. He thought that Yan Xiaohan probably wouldn't want him to stay here to get in the way. He sighed and indicated to Du Lang that they were leaving. He said to Wei Shushou, "I'll be taking my leave." Before he could finish, as if he'd had eyes on the back of his head, Yan Xiaohan coldly said, "Going somewhere? Come here." Fu Shen was confused. He stayed where he was, unmoving. Yan Xiaohan turned his head to look back at him. He stood as if somewhat impatient and walked over to take the wheelchair from Du Lang's hands. He pushed Fu Shen in front of the pillars, away from the gazes of the crowd. His arms reached forward and tightly encircled Fu Shen from behind, wheelchair and all. He bent his head and quietly asked, "Where are you going? I just gave you a little scolding and you're ready to pack your bags and go back home?" Fu Shen said, "I'm not..." Yan Xiaohan said, "Imagine it yourself if you were me and heard that you and Wei Shushou were in the scripture library and saw smoke billowing up to the sky from a distance. How would you feel?" Fu Shen said, "I wasn't..." Yan Xiaohan said, "You weren't inside and you didn't light the fire yourself. But since you knew there was something wrong inside the building, why didn't you have someone go get me?" Fu Shen didn't respond. "Was I wrong to scold you?" Yan Xiaohan pinched his chin, forcing him to lift his head to look at him. "What if something happened to you? Would I survive? I know you're skilled in martial arts, but you have to admit that a person in a wheelchair can't get an advantage over a person who can walk normally. Jing Yuan, For everything else, you do whatever you want, but when it comes to this kind of thing, don't just treat what I say like the wind blowing past your ear, and don't pretend to be obedient to humor me. All right? These words could well be called total devotion, nearly amounting to cutting out a slice of his own heart for him to look at. Fu Shen's throat stung. He hesitated briefly, then gruffly said, "I'm sorry." Yan Xiaohan snorted a laugh and didn't respond. He only said, "Remember it. I'll square the account with you when we get home." It was said that when a husband and wife fought at the head of the bed, they would make up at the foot of the bed. When it came to Yan Xiaohan, he didn't even give Fu Shen the chance to get to the foot of the bed. He pulled him right back on the spot. Wei Shu Shou didn't know what the two of them had said, but in the crack that Yan Xiaohan's body wasn't blocking, he seemed to see Fu Shen voluntarily lift his head. General Wei, who was a married man, covered his eyes and pretended to see nothing while inwardly marveling. Two sets of lips touched once and parted. Yan Xiaohan gently bit Fu Shen's lower lip with evil designs and put on a show of propriety, said, "Fine. Let's go back to business. That attack of yours really wasn't meant to spare anyone's feelings." Sorry, there was a hair. His words had dispelled the anxiety in Fu Shen's heart. His body seemed to be slowly warming back up from its iciness. He was half a beat slow, catching up to Yan Xiaohan suddenly changing the subject, and didn't understand the latter part of what he had said. A little blank, he said, "What?" The Feilong guard had tied the man up. Yan Xiaohan pulled out the sword and lifted the man's head to show Fu Shen his face. "It's an old acquaintance of yours, but he's changed too much. You don't recognize him?" Fu Shen stared for a while at the face so emaciated it was like a skull, and said in astonishment, "Yi Siming?" Riding out abreast to wander Mount Beiyuan, the later collapse and fatal arrow at the Qinsha Gap, all the events of the past, everything fell into place at last in this moment of eyes locking in silence. One of them was gravely injured and unable to walk, and the other had aged dramatically. "General Yi, how long since we last met?" Yan Xiaohan stepped sideways to block Fu Shen's line of sight and said with a fake smile, "I seem to recall the Jinwu Guard's depot isn't located here." Yi Siming stared at him hatefully and hoarsely said, "Yan Xiaohan, don't celebrate so soon. Sooner or later you'll share the same fate as Fu Shen. Don't put yourself to the trouble of worrying about his fate and mine. I think you'd be better off considering your own fate after you enter the North Prison," Yan Xiaohan said, returning his sword to its sheath. "Take him back." "You dare!" Yi Siming began to struggle fiercely and loudly cried, "I am a third-rank general of the Jinwu Guard. Without His Majesty's degree, you dare to arrest me?" Yan Xiaohan, unmoved, said, King Sha's or Qing Shu Temple's Chuan Yang Daoshang attempted to assassinate His Majesty at the vast longevity festival. All of the Qing Shu Temple's people are waiting in jail to be dealt with. With you squirreled away in the scripture library, who's to say that you aren't a traitor and a co-conspirator? I have received orders to lead this investigation. The Feilong Guard needs no imperial decree to arrest you. Slander and calumny. Calumny? Yeah, calumny. Probably false claims. Yi Siming shouted, "I had no idea that Chun Yang was going to try to assassinate His Majesty. This has absolutely nothing to do with me." Yan Xiaohan smiled faintly. "Oh, then what were you doing in the scripture library?" It was as if someone had choked Yi Siming. He suddenly stopped talking. A long moment later, he finally said with difficulty, "I was just looking around." "Don't waste your effort concocting lies," Fushen suddenly spoke up, calmly said. "The second floor of the scripture library is a full step narrower than the first floor. There must be another layer inside the wall of the first floor. This place is in a remote location and heaped with dust, but the steps are very clean with no moss growing on them. It's clear someone comes here often, but they don't stay long inside. There's probably a secret room in this building. If it isn't behind the wall, then it's underground. The lock wasn't broken, so you must have gotten in through the window. You only got here a moment ahead of me. When you noticed that someone was approaching from outside, you hid inside the inner layer. Maybe you originally meant to go into the secret room to get something. But very unluckily, because no one had been there recently, a layer of dust had accumulated on the door of the scripture library. You left behind a footprint, half inside the wall and half outside the wall and half inside. I guessed that you hadn't left yet, so I had the general way get some damp firewood and light it on fire. Whether it was a layer inside the wall or a hidden room, any place that would hide a library, naturally it would also float in through the cracks and air holes. It's the traditional method of fumigating a cave to get rid of poisonous insects. He laughed softly. As expected, not long after you ran out, right into the trap. As he spoke, the first group of Fei Long guards, who had gone inside to search, had filed out. Shen Yisei held a box in his hands. "Your Honor, there's a staircase inside the wall leading down to a secret room underground. I figure that the secret room has already been cleaned out. We only found this." He offered up the box. Yan Shaohan opened it and took a look. He immediately understood. A long-stemmed pipe. On the ground, Yi Siming suddenly began to writhe as though he had gone insane. "Give it to me! Give it to me!" Fu Shen said in bewilderment. "What's this?" Yan Shaohan showed him the exquisite smoking set in the box and explained, "In the recent case of the dead Jinwu guard, we suspected that he died in the saddle due to the effects of a drug. Most likely, Yi Siming also takes these drugs. This drug is unprecedented. It comes in the form of brown powder. When inhaled after being heated over a flame, it makes a person feel brimming with vitality, with far more energy, but it is very harmful to the body and easy to become addicted to, as well as hard to stop taking." Watching the uncontrollable drug craving of the seemingly frenzied Yi Siming, Fu Shen whispered, "He's become like this because of that addictive drug?" Yan Shaohan lowered his gaze and looked at him. He had guessed the truth behind the Qingsha Gap attack, and he understood Fu Shen and Yi Siming's past together when they were young. Therefore, as soon as this question was spoken, he grasped Fu Shen's unspoken subtext. He was being soft-hearted, nostalgic, attempting to put the blame for all the great challenges and changes, the helplessness of recent years onto a drug that reached down to the bone and could make a person live in a dream. Yan Shaohan knew that these two had once been sworn friends. Yi Siming was steady and shrewd, but he had still willingly run the risk of sheltering those people from the Jin family. For Fu Shen. And just yesterday he had told Fu Shen whether he wanted to take it up or let it go. No one could force him to take revenge. But this time, he had to be cruel. The reason he has become like this isn't because of a drug. Yan Shaohan put a hand on Fu Shen's shoulder, making him look directly at Yi Siming. It's because of his bottomless greed. A wildly ambitious perfidious person isn't worthy of your pity. That is a great word, and after I finish this chapter, I'm going to look it up because that is cool. Eyes as calm as a still night met a pair of blood-red, protruding eyes. In that moment, they seemed to be standing at opposite ends from their high-spirited youth, separated by an endless landscape, casting a single distant glance, then parting company, never again to look back. You don't have to take revenge, but you can never forget who injured you. Only by knowing pain can a person live longer. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. I'm going to take a sip, and then I'm going to look up perfidious. Because that is quite a crossword puzzle word, and I want to know the actual definition. 1 second. I'm kind of excited that we're getting into the actual, like, drug arc thing, or, like, the mystery aspect. Like, I was definitely enjoying the relationship aspect, but this is really cool, too. Perfidious. Well, okay. Deceitful and untrustworthy. Okay, well, that was short, sweet, and to the point. I could have guessed that just through context. Alright, chapter 40. Yi Siming, heir of the Duke of Chen, first given the rank of 4th rank captain in the Jinwu Guard, promoted through his efforts to general of the left Jinwu Guard. He had been born to a wealthy and noble family, served in the emperor's presence, and been viewed as a trustworthy aide to the emperor. Sorry, I had to fix that. His career as an official was a success, his future boundless. Supposing he hadn't insisted on scheming to suppress the Feilong Guard, supposing he hadn't encountered Chun Yang Daoshang, Yu Siming's life ought to have been a smooth, unbroken road. As long as he adhered strictly to his duty and didn't commit any heinous crimes, he could have lived out his whole life smoothly and without worries. Such a pity. Yi Siming has already made a full confession. Using the identity of a Qingshu temple priest, you privately enticed people to take the drug known as white dew powder, leading to the deaths of 1 Jinwu guard and 300 commoners. Dang. The only survivor being Yi Siming. The Feilong Guard recovered a box of smoking paraphernalia from the secret room beneath the scripture library, as well as a number of specially made lamps and a quantity of remaining drugs. I thought they said they just found the pipe. We have testimony and physical evidence. Taoist Chun Yang, is there anything you want to say? The prison cell was silent and dim, with the smell of blood floating through the air. The quiet recitations of the Tao Te Ching had at some point stopped. The man dangling by his arms from a ceiling beam, seemingly soaked with blood from top to bottom, opened his sole remaining eye with difficulty. His gaze passed through the crowd and fell precisely on Fu Shen, who was in the shadows outside the cell. His mouth slowly widened into a bone-chilling smile. Outside, is that the Marquise of Jinning, Fu Shen? General Fu. All of Chun Yang's Daoshang's teeth had been knocked out. Indistinctly, he demanded, "Ask him to come in." Yan Xiaohan immediately felt regret. He had known he shouldn't have brought Fu Shen to the Feilong Guard with them. Because of Yi Siming, his emotions must have been in an extremely bewildered state. Yan Xiaohan hadn't felt comfortable letting him go back to Yan Manor alone. He had wanted to use Yi Siming's interrogation as an opportunity to give Fu Shen a clear understanding of what kind of person he was, so he would stop uselessly augmenting his sorrow for the sake of nostalgia. They both occupied high positions, but Fu Shen had grown up as a child of nobility, in a privileged position. His field of vision had been wide, and moreover his temperament was magnanimous. So he had always been very lenient toward the offenses others gave. Yan Xiaohan, meanwhile, had climbed up step by step from the lowest levels of the Imperial Guard, encountering innumerable stumbling blocks along the way. If he hadn't been callous and vengeful, not a speck of his ashes would remain today. Their life experiences dictated that the two of them would have totally different attitudes towards Yi Siming. Now, Yan Xiaohan was attempting to shift Fu Shen over to his own side, but he didn't dare to push too hard, afraid that if he did, he would break him. Now that Chun Yang Daoshang had voluntarily asked to see Fu Shen, he began to worry again. Lord Yan had just this drop of fussiness, and all of it was directed at the Marquise of Jinning. Fu Shen had sharp ears. Before Yan Xiaohan could make a decision, he rolled out of the shadows, pushing his own wheelchair, indicating for Yan Xiaohan to let him in. Careful. Before he could finish, Fu Shen patted the back of his hand comfortingly. You're here, aren't you? Don't worry. He'd really learned well. Too well. Those few words were some unknown magic potion. In an instant, Yan Xiaohan's whole heart was smoothed out. The warmth in his eyes seemed impossible to hide, rippling outward all at once. He opened the door to the cell and let Fu Shen in. Fu Shen didn't waste words with Chun Yang Daoshang. He calmly said, Go on. Chun Yang Daoshang gave a hoarse laugh. His tone was unexpectedly deferential and cooperative. Where would you like me to start, General? From the time you received that broken arrow, or the time Yi Siming believed that Yang Hexuan said and came to Qingshu Temple to ask for drugs? When Yi Siming believed what Yang Hexuan said and came to Qingshu Temple to ask for drugs. Okay, that makes a little more sense. Fu Shen seemed to have been suddenly pricked with a poisoned needle. His pupils contracted abruptly. It was you? Chun Yang Daoshang's sole remaining eye lit up frighteningly, his sharp gaze shooting out from behind his unkempt hair. General, I suppose you understand now? This is vengeance. Heaven's law is far-reaching. These are all fitting punishments for their crimes. It was like a sudden thunderclap reverberating in his mind. All the fragmentary clues came together in one complete picture. In this contest between him and the Emperor Yun Tai, there had always been a third person hiding in the shadows, agitating the situation. Now he had finally floated to the surface. It was only because that broken arrow that ought to have been buried deep had been sent to Fu Shen that he had followed the traces and found out the truth behind the attack in Qingsha Gap. This person had always been silently observing his movements from behind, so when Fu Shen had been looking for Mu Baxiu, someone had just happened to alert the enemy, making Mu Baxiu mistakenly believe that Yi Siming wanted to silence him and thus bite back, revealing Emperor Yun Tai and Yi Siming's whole plan. No wonder he'd always had a sense of being led around by the nose. No wonder it had been so easy once he had set about investigating the truth. Turned out that someone had gone ahead to part the mist for him, placed the truth by the roadside, just waiting for him to bend down and pick it up. No wonder you wanted to assassinate His Majesty, Fu Shen whispered. And then there's the white dew powder. From beginning to end, it was prepared solely because of Yi Siming. Taoist Chunyang contemptuously said. Yi Siming's hatred for the Lord Yan next you is profound. The South Yemen is in decline, the Jinwu Guard getting worse day by day. He disdained the Falun Guard and coveted their grandeur. So he schemed and plotted to ingratiate himself with the emperor. Ha! Who would have thought that the mighty heir to a duke would in the end fall to be an emperor's dog? Fu Shen said, so he had Yan Hexuan give him the white dew powder to take. Like dew and lightning, like dream and fantasy. Chun Yang said spiritedly, General Fu, do you know what kind of people are most likely to become the greedy, the lustful, the ambitious, the delusional, the paranoid, the narrow-minded? In a beautiful dream, they think that the whole world belongs to them, forget their worries, feel that there is nothing they cannot do. Then they wake from that dream, and the fantasy disperses. They can't endure their own pettiness and incompetence, so they taste it again and again, living in a dream until their internal organs are completely hollowed out and they become empty shells. White dew powder is also called soul-losing powder. It said that even the souls of those who take it will disappear. He laughed coldly. These rapacious and unsculptuous things don't deserve to be called men. They only deserve to be walking corpses. Fu Shen suddenly said, What about Yan Hexuan? You entered the palace on Yang Shu's recommendation, but you killed Yang Hexuan. So you not only aren't with the Yang family, you're their enemy. Why did you decide to tie yourself to the Yang family ship? The cell instantly fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. All that remained was the sound of Chun Yang Daoshang's heavy, labored breathing. Why have you stopped talking? Fu Shen said. Why did you want to lead me to discover the chief conspirator behind the Qingsha Gap? Why did you want to assassinate His Majesty? Why did you want to plot against Yi Siming? If I'm not unduly flattered myself, Daoshang, you have been scheming in order to get revenge for me. Are we acquainted? Or rather, what unbreakable bond is there between you and me? Or you and the Fu family? Oh. I did not pick up on that, and I am intrigued. His silence seemed more like a tacit acknowledgement. Fu Shen rolled his wheelchair and slowly came up in front of him. Judging from your reaction, is there some profound hatred between the Yang family and the Fu family that I don't yet know about? Chunyang Daoshang gazed fixedly at him in silence. Then suddenly he broke out into loud laughter. This was a frenzied laugh fit to break a person's liver and gall, permeated with satisfaction and defiance, horses' iron sand gritting together. The arrogance on that mangled face couldn't be hidden. At one moment, Fu Shen actually thought that there was something inexplicably familiar about him. But as he laughed and laughed, a trickle of blood snaked down the corner of his mouth. In the 12th year of Yun Tai, the Eastern Tartars and the Z clan united to invade the Central Plains. In the Battle of Gushan Pass, General Fu Tingshun found himself surrounded, caught between two enemies. The Baiyuan cavalry had requested reinforcements from Tang Shu's forces and Tang Shu's military commissioner Yang Shu, because of the Fu family's unwillingness to send their daughters to the Eastern Palace, harbored deep resentment and chose to take revenge. He held back, unwilling to dispatch soldiers, ultimately resulting in General Fu dying in battle. Every day the Yang trader drags out his miserable existence. It's another day that General Fu's brave spirit cannot be at peace. He's a soldier. He was one of General Fu's soldiers. The debt of blood runs deep. There can be no reconciliation. Fu Shen put a hand around his neck. Yan Xiaohan burst out, Jing Yuan! Fu Shen's expression was frighteningly cold, his gaze like a knife. Every word was squeezed out between clenched teeth. My uncle has been dead 6 years. Why have you waited this long to take revenge? Chun Yang rasped. When Yang Shu sat watching the fires burn across the river, he delayed until the Beiyuan's army, main force, retreating in defeat, arrived. There wasn't a single survivor from those who knew the details at the time. If not for the Kingshaw Gap incident, when we caught a horse thief in Yunshao, who had once served under Yang Shu and confessed all these past events as soon as he heard Beiyuan cavalry, Yang Shu would have continued holding its reputation built on a lie. How could the thousands of brave spirits buried in the Gushan Pass have been able to rest in peace? We, Fu Shen said. You and who else? Blood spilled in gout after gout after the man... Restart! Blood spilled in gout after gout from the man's nose and mouth, flowing down onto Fu Shen's hand with its prominent muscle and bone, soaking his sleeve in molted bloodstains. I can't say. Bullshit, Fu Shen laughed coldly in utter rage. You underwent the worst torture in the North Prison and were unwilling to speak. But as soon as I came, you were only too eager to confess everything. Weren't you specifically waiting for me? Talk! Chu Yang Daoshang's face was red and swollen, his chest undulating violently. Yan Xiaohan threw himself forward and grabbed Fu Shen's hand. Jing Yun, let go. You're going to choke him to death. Scram! Fu Shen furiously threw him off. His fingers tightened, fingertips seeming to sink into that person's flesh. Don't you fucking play dead. Talk! Who are you? Who is the person behind you? The single eye beneath the messy hair met the young general's chilly gaze. Fu Shen distinctly saw that a tear seemed to flash in that eye. Eldest young master, my hands are stained with blood. I have willfully slaughtered the innocent and know my own sins to be unpardonable. When I reach the netherworld, I will be ashamed to face my former comrades. I am a nameless foot soldier. There is no need for you to ask my name again. Fu Shen instantly understood. Chun Yang Daoshang had once served in the Beiyuan cavalry, and he had served at the same time as his father and second uncle, because only those people would ignore his current position and call him eldest young master. And once his identity was revealed, the Beiyuan cavalry and Fu Shen would all be dragged into a vortex. So he had to die. Wang Goer and his family killed without cause. The other commoners he had used to try out the drug, one blood debt after another, wouldn't disappear even with his death. Chun Yang Daoshang struggled until his strength was spent. His eyes protruded, blood and tears mixed. Only his lips moved weakly. His breath came as thin as gossamer. Apart from Fu Shen, no one heard what he said. There came the crisp crack of snapping bone. The man's head fell limply. Fu Shen looked away indifferently, an unspeakable gloom about him. His pale hand dripped with fresh blood, like a god of death who had walked out of hell. The Taoist sorcerer Chun Yang colluded with a court official and used the pretext of presenting a golden elixir pill at the vast longevity fest to attempt to murder His Majesty. That is his first crime. He illicitly manufactured the drug white dew powder and did injury to the Jinwu Guard's General Yi Simeng Yan Hexuan, a captain in the Jinwu Guard, and numerous others. That is his second crime. This criminal, knowing that his crimes were unpardonable and that he could not escape death, committed suicide from dread of punishment today at 1 o'clock. He calmly asked, "Is that good enough, Lord Yan?" Before he could get an answer, Fu Shen turned his wheelchair and left the prison cell, consulting no one. The moment he left the North Prison, his figure seemed to instantly be swallowed up by the daylight pouring down. A Beiyuan cavalry soldier who had once marched across battlefields unhindered and assumed a fake identity traveled like a wrath through the capital streets and alley. White dew powder had quietly melted amid the evening drums and morning bells of Qingshu Temple, the decadent fragrance condensing into a thin blade that killed bloodlessly. And the last words he had said to Fu Shen were, "Kill me." Well, those were some twisty turns right there. I was not expecting that one, I will say. But I like the twist. Okay, I can hear myself getting raspy. I'm gonna blow my nose real quick. I'm definitely missing my tea tonight. Oh, that's better. Chapter 41. Fu Shen didn't wait for anyone. Consulting no one, he simply left. Yan Xiaohan had a mind to go after him, but while Chunyang Daoshang was dead, how to wrap up this case, how to make up testimony, how to smooth over the sequence of cause and effect, all remained for him to clean up. Fortunately, he had cleared the scene in advance during the interrogation. Only he and Fu Shen had heard Chunyang Daoshang's last words. But even so, Yan Xiaohan was still worried. He gave his subordinates a strict order to hold their tongues, not let a drop of what had happened today leak out. While the Feilong Guard were the Emperor's eyes and ears, matters having reached this stage, it was no longer in His Majesty's power to choose whether to hear or not, see or not. Supposing it really had been Yan Shu, deliberately delaying, dragging his feet on sending reinforcements that had led to Fu Tingxin dying in battle, this earth-shattering major case would completely alter Fu Shen and the Beiyuan cavalry's positions, even influence the structure of court. Yang Shu was Empress Yang's big brother, a major aide to the crown prince. Now, because of the assassination attempt at the longevity festival, the empress was dead, and the remaining two had been knocked down from the high clouds. One more careless slip, and the emperor would depose the crown prince without hesitation. Depose, not dispose, sorry. Regardless of whether Emperor Yuntai knew the inside story, Fu Shen presumably no longer wanted to see him on the throne. A succession struggle was inevitable under the circumstances, and Fu Shen held Beiyuan's military authority. For whoever he wanted to push up onto the throne, inheriting power over the empire would be practically a settled matter. Looking at it from the standpoint of common sense, he would be most likely to choose Prince Qi, but Yan Xiaohan had always thought that Fu Shen wasn't close to Prince Qi. Instead, it seemed that he was always avoiding suspicion, not wishing to incur the infamy of a prince making friends with an important minister. Yan Xiaohan ordered Chunyang Daoshang's body cleaned up, then enclosed Yi Siming's confession in a file. He organized the file and used it along with the records from the Yang Hexuan case, writing a memorial to the throne winding up the case. Daoist Chunyang, name unknown, background unknown, entered the capital in the 22nd year of Yuntai and lodged in the capital's Qingsu temple. For years, he illicitly created the drug known as white dew powder and traded with the merchants and commoners in the area. He also used dissonant rhetoric to deceive the Jinwu Guard Captain Yan Hexuan, claiming that this drug had the effect of increasing mental clarity and improving vitality. He also presented the white dew powder to a high official, resulting in the unfortunate injury of the former Jinwu Guard commander Yi Siming, who took the drug and became addicted. It just so happened that this coincided with Emperor Yuntai being in poor health. Through Yang Hexuan's introduction, Tang Shao's military commissioner Yang Shu recommended Daoist Chun Yang to enter the palace, where he remained long-term receiving support due to the efficacy of his elixir pills. Later, when events at Kuning Palace transpired, Yang Shu, in order to protect the empress and her child, did not stint to take the risk of plotting with Daoist Chun Yang to assassinate the emperor while presenting an elixir pill at the vast longevity festival. Fortunately, the Marquis of Jinning, Fu Shen, was vigilant and intervened in time, keeping the poison needle of the rebels and traitors from prevailing. After the event transpired, Daoist Chun Yang committed suicide through dread of receiving punishment in the interrogation department. Yi Siming confessed the matter of the white dew powder, and afterward, due to an attack of drug craving, went insane and died biting his own tongue. Only Yang Shu made a full confession. The crime of plotting rebellion is a wickedness beyond redemption. The punishment, according to law, is beheading. After the dossier and the memorial were sent up, Emperor Yuntai got to work despite his illness. On the conviction notice presented by the Ministry of Justice, he used a brush dipped in red ink to slap down a heavy, to be executed publicly by cutting in half at the wrist. Ow. Yo. That's, are they gonna just, I mean, I could understand like this, but like this? It's a weird way to do it, I guess. Anyway's gonna be awful, but I don't know. At this point, the dust finally settled in the cases of the Jinwu Guard and the vast longevity festival, which had shaken the capital, and the truth of the attack on the Eastern Tartar diplomatic mission, which had long since faded from memory, silently emerged, and with Chunyang Daoshang's death, was silently covered up and left unmentioned by those with an agenda. But those are later matters. That day, after he had written the memorial, Yan Xiaohan tossed aside his brush and hurried home. The first words out of his mouth when he walked in were, "Where is the Lord Marquis?" A maid said, "In the bedroom. He hasn't left it since coming back in the afternoon." Yan Xiaohan's heart lurched. He followed up. "Was there anything wrong with him?" The maid shook her head in confusion. "There was nothing unusual. He only said that he did not want to be disturbed. The Lord Marquis does not seem to be in a very good mood, but it doesn't seem to be as bad as the last time." Yan Xiaohan became even more worried. For the average person receiving such a shock, collapsing, venting, and even bursting into tears would all be normal reactions. Even if Fu Shen were forged of iron, he still couldn't keep up all of his feelings hidden in his heart, not letting a drop leak out, slowly digesting them. The calmer he was, the greater the trouble. Yan Shaohan would rather have seen him cry, throw a tantrum, and threaten to hang himself. He was afraid of Fu Shen shutting himself off and getting stuck in an insolvable dilemma, injuring his mental and physical well-being. He stood in front of the bedroom door, making ready to be refused and break down the door. He raised his hand and knocked. Jing Yuan? Fu Shen's answer came quickly. Come in. Yan Shaohan was startled. He opened the door and went in. The lamp in the door hadn't been lit. It was dim in the twilight. Fu Shen was sitting by the window, staring emptily at the remaining glow of the setting sun. Once he went in, Fu Shen turned his head and said, You don't normally knock before entering. Why so formal today? Huh? Yan Shaohan said hesitantly. You... Fu Shen laughed. So careful. Are you worried that I'm in a bad mood, or afraid that I'm taking this too hard? Not one of the scenes that Yan Shaohan had envisaged had taken place. Fu Shen had, in fact, repeatedly pondered today's events. But he really was calm, neither forcing himself to look happy, nor deliberately acting relaxed. Sit. Fu Shen casually pointed to a stool next to him. When Yan Shaohan was seated across from him, he said, There's no need to worry about me. Well, the truth Chun Yang spoke of in prison today was horrifying to hear. It was a statement from only one of the parties involved. Its credibility isn't high. It will require further investigation. Yan Shaohan absolutely hadn't expected him to be able to be calm to this degree. He didn't quite dare to believe his own ears, and suspected that this was also a sign of insanity. Jing Yuan. Don't look at me like that, Fu Shen said in exasperation. I'm not delirious. Yan Xiang, you've interrogated hundreds upon thousands of prisoners in the Feilong Guard. Do you still believe that a man speaks the truth on the point of death? Anyways, I don't believe it anymore. He laughed in self-mockery. You can say that I'm cold-blooded. During my years in Yanshou, I interrogated Eastern Tartars and Z, and I've interrogated Han. There are those who will cling to life and fear death, who give everything up when you give them a little scare. But the majority keep making things up until they die, attempting to use themselves as bait and drag others into the grave with them. Yan Shaohan suddenly realized that Fu Shen's experiences were completely different from the average person's. He had been plunged again and again into the most extreme of situations without warning, been honed for many years on the battlefield, where everything could change in the space of a breath. He wouldn't turn a hair with all the weight of Mount Tai pressing down on his head. The higher the waves billowed in front of him, the more his tenacity and cool would be beyond imagining. Unexpectedly, he recalled a figure in the torrential rain. That day, even he had been on the brink of losing control. But Fu Shen had still composedly said, When a gentleman conducts himself in society, there are actions he takes and actions he must not take. A temperament of black iron, a heart of ice and snow. Fu Shen could still go on to make a detailed analysis. It may be true that Yang Shu deliberately delayed in sending reinforcements during the Battle of Gushan Pass, but he didn't have the greatest impact on the outcome of the battle. I don't know whether Chunyang Daoshan didn't realize it or whether he was deliberately obscuring primary and secondary causes. After my uncle died in battle, the most tenacious person wasn't me, but His Highness Prince Su. We have both come to conclusions about the Battle of Gushan Pass, even if Yang Shu's Tao Shang, Tang Shu forces had arrived in time, they still wouldn't have been able to save my uncle. They could only have come in time for the closing. And even though Yang Shu delayed, he still controlled himself and remained within the scope of not arousing suspicion. At least Prince Su and I saw nothing unusual. Had he been too unsubtle, Prince Su would have slaughtered him by now. He wouldn't have let him drag out his miserable existence this long. Also, he inadvertently mentioned a we. Chingsha Gap, Mu Boxiu, the white dew powder, the vast longevity feast. None of those things could have been accomplished by a single person. I feel that there is a big net in the capital. Chunyang Daoshang was only a game piece. It's the person behind him holding the pieces who is the crux. As for the final reason, I only have my own guess. You can hear it out for the time being. It may not be right. Fushen said, "That white dew powder drug is too evil. Once it spreads, it will cause no end of trouble." And Chunyang Daoshang, in order to cover his tracks, killed the whole 3-person family of a child he had delivered his message for him. And then there are the innocent commoners who died because... Please ignore that. In order to cover his tracks, killed the whole 3-person family of a child he had delivered his message. He had delivered his message for him. And then there are the innocent commoners who died because of the white dew powder. If he had really served in the Beiyuan cavalry and had been my uncle's subordinate, these tactics would be too vicious. I have a feeling that not only Chunyang Daoshang, but also the person behind him, considering their conduct and style, seem like more former subordinates of my late father. Yan Xiaohan said, "Aren't you being a little disrespectful to my father-in-law by speaking like this?" Fushen sneered. "When my late father was alive, he often said that I was soft-hearted, made in the same mold as my second uncle. How benevolent do you think he was?" Yan Xiaohan didn't answer. After a while, he finally said, "Since you don't believe Chunyang Daoshang, why did you kill him with your own hands?" This question gave Fushen pause. Then, not especially moved, he said, "He served in the Beiyuan cavalry. If I didn't throttle him, was I supposed to wait for him to drag me under?" Yan Xiaohan suddenly stood and drew close to pinch his forearm. The sharp pain exploded. Fushen's muscles tensed. Did something spill?
Yes.
What spilled?
Never mind, just read.
Okay. Yan Xiaohan suddenly stood and drew close to pinch his forearm. The sharp pain exploded. Fushen's muscles tensed instantly, but for some reason he didn't dodge. "Does it hurt?" said Yan Xiaohan. Fushen was bewildered. "Obviously. Why don't I pinch you so you can have a try?" "It had better hurt." Yan Xiaohan stood in front of him and opened his arms slightly. This was an entirely tolerant posture. His eyes were aimed at Fushen's. "Remember it. You are a living, breathing person, not something made of iron and stone." Chunyang Daoshang had been indiscriminate in his methods, scheming and calculating, but everything he had done had been for Fushen's sake, and for his family matriarch behind him, and all the spirits of the brave departed. There were still people who remembered the departed loyal souls, still people acting for him, spilling their very last drop of blood for him. The Bayuan soldiers all shared an origin. Even if they had never met, separated by time, Fushen still knew that this was his comrade, so he had helped Chun Yang Daoshang achieve his aim. All calm analyses were built outside of emotion. Only by setting aside his position and using all of his reason to seek out points of suspicion could Fushen manage to force himself to forget the tears that had flashed in Chun Yang Daoshang's eyes. After all, he wasn't built of iron and stone. After an interval of blank staring, Fushen's ramrod straight back finally fell. Then, without a word, he leaned forward slightly and buried his face in Yan Xiaohan's embrace. 2 hands landed gently on his back. The Bayuan army has guarded the border for nearly 20 years. So many people have left their bones buried in the north, but all they've gotten in return has been unwanted and unwarranted suspicion, he whispered. My uncle fought to the death, while vile people of Yang Shu's likes are running amok in court to this day. Even taking vengeance requires the lives of the Bayuan soldiers. Don't be too grieved. Yan Xiaohan hugged him tightly and said quietly, Look, no matter what happens, tens of thousands of Bayuan soldiers will always stand behind you. And so will I. Sorry about that. I guess something spilled. So you might hear my dad walking past a couple times. Hang on. Drink break. All right. Chapter 42. Yan Xiaohan stood there quietly hugging him for a while, both wishing to give him support and afraid that he would be overly grieved. So he patted Fushen on the shoulder and, deliberately teasing, said, Lord Marquise, are you crying? Should I cheer you up? Of course, Fushen couldn't let himself wallow in gloom too long. It was only that the times he could lean on another person were rare. He was a little unwilling to get up. In a muffled voice, he said, Get out. Is there wine at home? Drink a couple of goblets with me. His tone didn't sound like an invitation to drink between husband and wife, but rather like the master of the house summoning his son to relieve his boredom. Yan Xiaohan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was just about to blurt out, You can't drink wine, but suddenly changed his mind. Supposing he could drown his sorrows in drink, giving him a chance to vent his feelings to his heart content, it would still beat keeping everything in his heart like he was now. There is, he said directly. Wait a moment, I'll have someone bring some. Okay, so I have to ask now that he's gone, did you guys hear my dad in the background? He accidentally dropped something, and there's a bathroom like right next to me that he had to put the liquid in. Was it loud? And I apologize if it was. That's probably not very ASMR positive for all these things. And now there's a very loud water noise above me. Oh my goodness. It is an entertaining night, isn't it? Anyway. Okay. Mildly, but no worries. Thank you. Life happens all around. I have no idea what he was doing or what he dropped. Oh, goodness. Fu Shen raised his head in astonishment. What's the matter with you? You're being so accommodating. I'm glad it wasn't too loud. Yan Xiaohan raised his eyebrows and drew close to ask, Are you telling me I haven't been accommodating before? Lord Marquise, consult your conscience. When have you ever asked for anything that I haven't agreed to? His tall figure gradually drew close, but unexpectedly there was no sense of oppression. Fu Shen put a finger against his chest, which was slowly pressing down, and said with a smile, Here I thought I could only get a mouthful of wine in exchange for some benefit. Since you're so sensible and considerate, things couldn't be better. Yan Xiaohan wouldn't let him off. He asked, What benefit? Fu Shen smiled without answering. Yan Xiaohan said, No gratitude for good intentions? Lord Marquise, that doesn't seem like the conduct of a gentleman. Then what do you want? Fu Shen asked in turn. Since I'm so sensible and show so much initiative, he said, meaningfully prodding Fu Shen's leg with his knee, shouldn't you give me some grander inducement? Fu Shen cast a glance below his belt and smirked. Hey, spring is here. Oh, goodness. Fu Shen felt no shame, but instead felt pride. He advanced even further and said something right into his ear, drawing a laugh from Fu Shen, who said, Go on. We'll see whether that third leg of yours is as hard as your bone. Let's agree ahead of time. Don't cry if it breaks. Oh, goodness. Yan Xiaohan was speechless. Hey, the heart of a thief, but not the guts of a thief, and you still won't let it go. Fu Shen pinched his chin and kissed his lips. Languidly, he said, Why don't you just be good and lie back? I guarantee you'll feel as though you were in paradise and come back for more. How about it? Sir. A man's voice was deep, not as coquettish as a woman's voice. But coming from his mouth, it had a particular bewitching allure. There was a deep light in Yan Xiaohan's eyes. Maintaining the posture of someone being seduced, he said lightly, At least I have 3 legs. Your third leg is all you have. Oh my god. I love that even when, like, they're trying to seduce each other and, like, have some smexy times, like, they're still sassing each other. Like, that is such a fundamental part of their being. The charming atmosphere instantly dissipated. Fu Shen couldn't resist. He nearly slapped him. But Yan Xiaohan caught him off guard and gained the advantage. He pressed him back against the chair and firmly kissed him. When the lengthy kiss ended, Fu Shen's head drooped and he panted for breath. Finally, Yan Xiaohan said in a very soft voice, Not now, but I want you. A corner of the gentle and controlled mask seemed to have finally broken off, revealing the bare-fanged, claw-brandishing possessiveness within. This desire wasn't especially pretty, but it was his truest aspect. Don't know about anybody else, but I do love a possessive main character when it's done well. There's a reason Lan San is one of my favorites. Lan Wanji. Yeah. There's a reason. Fu Shen's chest undulated constantly. Even seated, he felt that his legs had gone weak. He thought to himself, Want all you like, you invertebrate, troublemaker. Sooner or later, I'll fuck you until you cry and say no more. But what he said was, Fine, fine, whatever you want. Good, Gaga, get up already. You're crushing me. Yan Xiaohan found that every time Fu Shen felt embarrassed, he would find all kinds of excuses to drive him away. This tiny discovery inexplicably pleased him, so he let Fu Shen go in satisfaction and went out to request wine on his behalf. Fu Shen listened to his footsteps briskly recede into the distance. He raised a hand and touched his sore, overheated lips and unconsciously smiled. He had always been reliable, filling the role of consoling others. For the first time, he had become the one deriving a sense of security and found that he could have someone to lean on. It felt both wonderful and indescribable. Leaving aside that he had to pretend to be crippled, even though Fu Shen's legs were actually better, they still couldn't take much weight in the short term. But when two grown men, full of vigor and vitality, spent all day fooling around in close quarters, some reaction arising was unavoidable. Was he really supposed to stand keeping to such respect and consideration between them for another 2 or 3 years? Thinking about it that way, giving way to him didn't seem all that impossible. While Yan Xiaohan poured wine for Fu Shen, he kept thinking that Fu Shen was watching him with some profound meaning in his gaze, as if he had picked up some money while walking, and that money had been dropped by Fu Shen. The wine was sweet and not strong, its fragrance agreeable. Fu Shen knocked back the wine in his cup in one gulp and praised, "Good wine," then said mockingly, "This cup is hard to come by. As an official, I suppose that Lord Yan must receive quite a few gifts paying respects to you from subordinates?" In official circles, some brides to smooth along relationships between higher and lower ranks were nothing out of the ordinary, especially when it came to a highly important yeoman like the Feilong Guard. Yan Xiaohan neither confirmed nor denied. He only said, "When it comes to paying my respects to the Lord Marquis, how could I dare to use ordinary wine? Of course, I have to pick the best." Fu Shen popped a pine nut into his mouth and suddenly said, "While the wine is good, it doesn't amount to the best." Yan Xiaohan didn't show his heroic spirit. He only drank slowly and said, "Do go on." Fu Shen looked askance at him with not quite smile. "The best wine I've ever drunk was in a small town near the border in Beiyuan. The wine was strong and the proprietress was nice." As expected, he managed to step on Yan Xiaohan's tail. Sourly, he said, "Was it the wine you liked, or the proprietress?" His posture seemed to be saying, "Just you dare try stepping out right in front of my face." Fu Shen said, "Mellow wine and an old acquaintance revisiting the past. The wine doesn't intoxicate, but one intoxicates oneself." Yan Xiaohan instantly wanted to stray from the subject. "And you have a past with her?" He really hadn't thought of the possibility that Fu Shen would encounter Kai Yue. In the vast sea of people, how could it be so easy for two people with different futures to meet again? Yan Xiaohan had never felt wronged on this account. In his heart, even though he had let Kai Yue go in the end, the wrong had already been done and Fu Shen had already broken with him. No matter how he remedied it, he couldn't pretend that the knife to the back had never existed. Seeing that Yan Xiaohan still hadn't understood, Fu Shen didn't illuminate further. He had been behaving underhandedly in this matter, as if he had been caught. As if he had caught Yan Xiaohan out in being secretly in love with him. He couldn't resist surreptitiously prodding, both looking forward to his expression after it was revealed and wanting to make him admit it himself. "I'm teasing you. I only have so many events in my past. Which of them don't include you?" Like a leering lecher. Fu Shen pinched his cheek. No one is as nice as you. You're the nicest. Yan Xiaohan knew perfectly well that his honey words couldn't be trusted, but he was still soothed in spite of himself, humored into submission. 2 goblets of wine clinked together with a crisp sound. Fu Shen knocked his back within 1 gulp. Yan Xiaohan saw an opening and struck, putting food into his bowl. Take it easy. However good the wine, you can't drink it like this. Fu Shen indolently said, Don't worry. My alcohol tolerance is excellent. If you're afraid I'll get drunk and disturb you, I'll go sleep in the guest room. Don't you feel guilty saying that, Lord Marquis? Yan Xiaohan said indifferently. Starting from the very first day, when have I ever let you go to the guest room? That's right, he did steal his bed, and has been. Prior to this, he was sleeping on that guest bed. Fu Shen sheepishly said, It's because you're too conscientious. Yan Xiaohan said, It's true that a child gets harder to mind the older he gets, Fu Shen said with a put-out sigh. Before you were talking about liking me best, and now it's just humph. Yan Xiaohan's efforts immediately fell through. When the 2 of them had had enough of trading childish remarks, they finally took the time before the wine went to their heads, while they were tipsy yet unusually clear-headed, to speak about Taoist Chunyang. We have to investigate further. I won't feel easy until we've uncovered the person behind him, Fu Shen said. Not just because of my second uncle. I'm afraid that with his assassination attempt having failed once, he'll want to try again. Then there's the white dew powder. If it isn't controlled, it will ferment sooner or later into a great disaster. Yan Xiaohan said, If he were gone, you wouldn't be trapped in the capital anymore. Anyone in that position would fear me, Fu Shen said, even if you were in his place. That isn't the crucial matter. The crucial matter is that none of the princes can undertake serious responsibility. Don't forget that our old neighbors are still watching. While His Majesty is severely paranoid, his attitude towards border affairs has always been tough. At present, only he can hold back the neighboring countries on all sides. Ignoring the Crown Prince, Prince Jing and Prince Qi are both very close with civilian officials. Think about it. The generals scattered to the 4 points, the 5 great capital barracks, and your imperial guard. Which of them isn't tightly held by His Majesty? As soon as the throne changes hands, no matter who is enthroned in the end, he still won't be able to obtain the support of the majority of court officials in the short term. He will have a hard time keeping foreigners from taking advantage of the vacancy to invade. When the Bayuan cavalry bears the brunt of it, who will I go to reason with? Yan Xiaohan thought about it and decided that he was right. But Chunyang is dead. Which direction are you planning to investigate in? The southwest, Fu Shen said, drinking a mouthful of wine. I said before that Chunyang's style makes it seem like he was my late father's subordinate. Of the high-ranking officers who fought with my late father and uncle at the northern border, the only one still living and in good health is Commandery Prince Ziping. Yeah, Ziping. Yan Xiaohan said, Commander Prince Ziping, Duan Guihong? Yes. Fu Shen said, the sole military officer not of the imperial family to be conferred the title of Commandery Prince during the current reign. While pacifying the northern border in the second year of Yun Tai, he was also under my grandfather's command, then later was transferred to the southwest. He has stood guard there for over a decade. I've heard that his friendship with my late father and uncle was quite deep. he may still have some impression of what happened back then. Yan Xiaohan said, "You said before that Taoist Chun Yang was only a piece on the game board. Commander Prince Zipeng is far away in Xinan. Reasonably speaking, it would be very hard for him to operate a large-scale force in the capital. This probably has nothing to do with him." Fu Shen sighed. "If I knew whom it had to do with, would I be sitting here drowning my sorrows in wine? Apart from him, I can't for the time being think of anyone else who would care so much about the Baiyuan cavalry's affairs. And you examine yourself. You haven't found the source of the white dew powder yet. What do the Feilong Guard do to earn your keep?" Yan Xiaohan saw indications that he was already a little drunk, because he had begun to be completely unreasonable. So he put down his cup and picked up the wine pot, planning to call it off here and send Fu Shen to wash up and go to sleep. But when he checked, he found that the wine pot was empty. While they had been speaking without Yan Xiaohan noticing the frequency with which he raised cups, Fu Shen had actually drunk up over half the pot without a sound. Wei Wuxian vibes, may I say? Yan Xiaohan's scalp went numb and said a silent prayer for Fu Shen's alcohol tolerance to be good, so he wouldn't make trouble while drunk. It wasn't that he was afraid, it was just that if Fu Shen really did attack him, he wouldn't be able to beat him. The alcohol surged up, his head became murky, and Fu Shen's eyes half closed. He peacefully allowed Yan Xiaohan to help him change clothes and bathe. All the way to bed, he was very well behaved and docile. We'll see about tomorrow morning. Yan Xiaohan's heart came down from his throat, bit by bit. While he sighed in relief, he thought that it was a little understimulating to be missing the drunken sex part of the program. Before that thought could leave his head, the drunkard suddenly called something out in a low voice. Yan Xiaohan didn't hear it clearly. He leaned down and asked what's. With a crash, the world turned upside down. When he came back to his senses, he was being held down by Fu Shen on the inner side of the bed. The person on top of him had both hands beside Yan Xiaohan's head. His drunken eyes were slightly narrowed. He looked loftily down on him from above. "Throwing yourself into my arms, Yan Xiaohan quickly put his arms under his waist. "Be careful with your legs! Don't kneel! Get down!" With his arms closing tight around him, Fu Shen's posture changed from kneeling to lying on him, planting his head right into the hollow of his neck. But he still wouldn't rest. He had to get up and look at his face. Yan Xiaohan said helplessly, "Jing Yuan, don't fool Han." He froze instantly, thinking that he had heard wrong. He asked in disbelief, "What did you call me?" Han. Like a Han. Fu Shen gently kissed the tip of his nose, then moved the corner of his lips. Han. This form of address was more effective even than strong drink. Yan Xiaohan felt his whole body begin to burn. But Fu Shen had a follow-up. Though it was indistinct and hoarse, his voice was full of tenderness. "Don't move. Be good. Gaga will love you." All right. Quick sip, then potential smexy times. That'll or just tease. Or just fade to black, which is probably the more likely option. Chapter 43. So many enchanting feelings, all of them scattered by these words. A breath caught in Yan Xiaohan's throat. He choked for a long moment, thoroughly losing his temper. He had finally worked it out. Fushen only spoke nicely, strong on the outside but weak on the inside. In reality, he didn't understand a thing. He was still using moves for seducing little girls on him. Why didn't he open his eyes and take a look? See whether the person under him was a little lamb who would meekly submit to insult, or a wild beast hiding sharp teeth, holding himself in restraint. Fushen was still speaking into his ear, affectionately coaxing him, but Yan Xiaohan no longer felt the earlier throb of nearly losing control. He only thought he looked adorable like this and couldn't resist playing around and teasing him. So he adjusted his posture slightly, letting Fushen lie down more comfortably, pretending that he really had been subdued. Say it again, all right? Fushen accordingly said, Ahan. But Yan Xiaohan said, not that. Then what do you want me to call you? Fushen laughed, his drunken eyes hazy. Tender affection clung to his features, lighting the whole room with a dazzling glow. Sweetheart? Lovely living flower? Yan Xiaohan couldn't help laughing. He raised his head to receive Fushen's light and intimate pecking kisses, using one hand to smooth his loose hair. Still unsatisfied, he demanded, none of those. Has to be what you called me before. Fushen was confused. What did I call you? There was a vast emptiness in Fushen's mind. How could he remember what he had said before? There was in fact in his character a tendency to get stuck on things. Just wasn't obvious normally. But when he was drunk, that characteristic would be immediately magnified. This question stopped him in his tracks. He simply tossed Yan Xiaohan aside and began to rack his brains. Yan Xiaohan, holding back his laughter, said, Ask me. I'll tell you. Fushen had great strength of character. No need. Out of the way. You won't ask me? His hand slid into his clothes, pressing against his back to slowly stroke and massage, making Fushen's brow knit involuntarily. It felt good, but there was a peculiar warmth. You really don't want to know? Yan Xiaohan guided him patiently. You said before, who is going to love me? As expected, Fushen was lured in by his words. He murmured indistinctly, Gaga. Had Lord Yan really had a tail, it would have been sticking up to the sky now. He coaxed, louder. I didn't hear you clearly. It had been many years since Fushen had called to anyone like this. Though he was drunk, he still felt ashamed. He stalled, unwilling to speak. Yan Xiaohan feigned displeasure. You were seducing me before. Now you won't even call to me. Are you planning to love me and leave me? In Fushen's eyes, the person beneath him had reddened eyes, with affection written on his features, his brows slightly knit, his thin lips pressed slightly together. Clearly the appearance of someone who had been subject to an excess of seduction. His heart immediately softened, with pity and with love. He thought there really was nothing he could do about this little siren. Anyway, he couldn't believe anything a man said in bed. So Fushen magnanimously compromised. Honestly, you have to insist on those 2 years? You're Gaga, all right? Gaga, Ahuan Gigi, Mengwe Gaga. Which one do you like? Even after so many years, being called Gaga was enough to instantly turn Yan Xiaohan's heart limp and soft. Silly thing. Burning with passion like a wild beast released from a cage, he held Fushen's waist and abruptly rolled over, his gaze suddenly turning deep and dark. Be good. Gaga will love you. The next morning, Fu Shen sat up in bed with a hangover headache, watching Yan Xiaohan coldly. Called it on both. Cut to black, and he has a hangover. Not beating him when he was drunk didn't mean he wouldn't beat him once he had sobered up. Yan Xiaohan thought to himself that it was great luck he hadn't really gone to that stage last night. Oh, okay. Half correct. He hoped that their first time would be completely willing, not taking advantage of another's weakened position. They are so healthy for each other. Therefore, last night he had only taken advantage of a surge of passion to ease the tension. Fu Shen could feel that, of course. The murderous expression of his now was mainly anger that he had taken advantage of his drunkenness to trick him into calling him Gaga several times. All right, don't be angry. Yan Xiaohan, brooking no argument, hugged him, laying in bed a while longer as long as the sun hadn't risen yet. Shamelessly acting spoiled, he said, "Why take matters of conjugal pleasure so seriously? Next time I'll call you, never mind Gaga, I'll even call you Master, all right?" Fu Shen threateningly poked him in the chest. "Fuck off." "Anyway, weren't you pleased last night?" Yan Xiaohan said quietly, a smile in his voice. "The Lord Marquis truly is ruthless to still not appreciate the favor when I work so hard to serve you." Fu Shen blushed from the roots of his ears and irritably said, "Darling, the Lord Marquis hopes next time you'll lie flat. There's no need for so much initiative." Yan Xiaohan gave a hey and said curiously, "You want to have a seat and do it yourself?" For his loose tongue, Lord Yan was thrown out of bed on the spot by the delicate jade in his arms. He crept out, hugging the wall, tail between his legs. "You sassed too close to the sun." Especially when he had a hangover, man. Learn when to quit. Emperor Yuntai dismissed court sessions for 3 days because of his illness. After Yan Xiaohan's memorial to the throne was sent up, as expected, he received a summons that same day. The manner of the eunuch passing along the message was even more eagerly attentive toward him than before. This was very significant. First, he had fulfilled his assignment well. Regardless of what the truth was, His Majesty was at least satisfied with the outcome of these 2 cases. Second, Emperor Yuntai was seriously ill. Apart from the princes coming into the palace every day to attend upon the patient, only a few long-serving old ministers of eminent virtue had been summoned. Discussion was heated in the outside world, with all kinds of guesses. That His Majesty would remember Yan Xiaohan at a time like that was significant to say that he was present in the emperor's mind. The location of the audience, as before, was Yunshin Hall. Or Yangshin Hall. Yangshin Hall. Emperor Yuntai and the Empress hadn't been deeply in love, but the Empress had been cautious in speech and action for many years, and had never been put out of place. The Yang family had gained merit in battle, serving the emperor. This was why, while he wasn't especially fond of her, Emperor Yuntai had accorded her considerable trust. But for Empress Yang to have silently cooked up such a scandal right under Emperor Yuntai's nose, as an emperor and as a man, this undoubtedly constituted a huge slap in the face for Emperor Yuntai. His Majesty had evidently sustained a heavy shock. Yan Xiaohan was startled when he saw him. There was a sickliness all over the lofty man's face. His eyes, always looking down in disdain, were clouded and dim. There was white at his temple. There was no longer any trace of the appearance of a majestic and competent monarch. These were clear omens of senility and decay. Emperor Yuntai listened to him analyze past events one by one. He gave him a few token sentences of praise, then suddenly changed the subject without warning. Mengui, when we are dead, which of our sons do you think will be able to take over the empire? Cold sweat instantly rolled down Yan Xiaohan's back. As a minister, the most taboo thing was to speak out of turn and take a side when it came to the succession. Unless he had his fill of living, he wouldn't dare to answer when asked a question like this. Fortunately, last night, apart from fooling around, he and Fu Shen had also discussed some proper business, and in that was contained a ready-made answer. Yan Xiaohan focused. He first declined to answer modestly. I fear I do not dare to opine on your Majesty's family affairs. Emperor Yuntai took no notice of this, waving a hand. There is no harm in speaking your mind. So Yan Xiaohan reworked what Fu Shen had said last night, adding in some praise and reciting it to Emperor Yuntai, the gist being, no one but you could do it. You must look after your health and continue to teach your sons. This flattery hit the spot for Emperor Yuntai. Visible to the naked eye, his expression softened. He pondered in silence for a long time, then said with emotion, We have appraised you rightly. For an ordinary minister, it would be a lifetime's luck to be given an audience with the emperor. But Yan Xiaohan was often taken aside by Emperor Yuntai and given his absolute confidence. This was an opportunity that many important and powerful ministers couldn't get even by asking. But he didn't want any special treatment. He'd had enough of alarms and trepidation. Yan Xiaohan would rather have picked up a sword and gone out to kill people. After praising him, Emperor Yuntai continued. According to the official petitions, the taxes paid this year by Jinshu are about 20% less than last year. Investigations show that those two places have experienced neither drought nor flood and have not had any man-made disasters, but many people mortgaged their land and became refugees. We've already commanded Prince Qing to set out next month and proceed personally to Jingshu to investigate. Take some people to accompany him and provide protection. If there is some critical state of affairs there, it would be convenient for you to act. Having said all these useless words, in the end he was giving him work. Yan Xiaohan secretly curled his lip in contempt. Who would have imagined that the next moment Emperor Yuntai would say, when you've returned to court, in your capacity as imperial investigator of the Feilong Guard, you will enter the Yinghua Hall Assembly. This time, Yan Xiaohan was thoroughly shocked. The Yinghua Hall Assembly had started at the establishment of the current dynasty. When the founding emperor had encountered matters in which he was uncertain, he often summoned all his ministers to Yinghua Hall to hold an audience. Over time, this had become a fixed practice. When later emperors were unable to look after affairs of state due to illness or other causes, they would hold the Yinghua Hall Assembly. At first, only the prime minister and grand secretaries could take part, but later the scope had gradually expanded to include the ministers of the 6 ministries. When the emperor was unable to manage, Yinghua Hall would act as the center of administration. The ministers would work together to decide affairs of state. After their petitions were sent in, they would require the written permission of the emperor, then they could be issued to the court to be put into effect. Since the founding of Great Zhou, there was no precedent for a general to be included in the Yinghua Hall Palace Assembly. Never mind that Yan Xiaohan wasn't even a proper general. He was a court lackey most deeply hated by the civil officials, a genuine article sycophantic minister. Emperor Yuntai was probably delirious from illness. What was the difference between sending Yan Xiaohan to Yinghua Hall and tossing a wolf into a herd of sheep? Yan Xiaohan had no idea how he had left the palace, nor how he floated back home like a wandering ghost. This state lasted until Fu Shen pushed away the servants and, composed and stern, said, "Everyone move aside. I think he must have run into some evil influence. No need to worry. I guarantee that'll be right as rain with a couple of slaps." Yan Xiaohan was unamused. He grabbed Fu Shen's hand in a daze and said blankly, "Jing Yuan, His Majesty wanted to reopen the Yinghua Hall Assembly." Fu Shen, confused, said, "Well, let him open it? Does it have anything to do with you?" Yan Xiaohan nodded. Said Fu Shen. "It does have to do with me," said Yan Xiaohan. "What?" Fu Shen was briefly stunned, then suddenly realized what he meant. His head began to pound wildly. "His Majesty is permitting you to enter Yinghua Hall Assembly." Setting foot in the center of administration amounted more or less to going directly from a lower third-rank official to an upper first-rank one. It meant that he could participate in affairs of state, formally join the ranks of the pinnacle of authority. Even Fu Shen, with his high position, wasn't qualified to enter the Yinghua Hall Assembly. That showed how high its threshold was. The Yinghua Hall Assembly had always been monopolized by civil officials. It was because of this that the fashion in Great Show was to value civil arts over military ones. All these years, the civil officials had kept down the military officials. Supposing that Yan Xiaohan set this precedent, even the atmosphere in court would change. Why would he suddenly just... Fu Shen said in disbelief. "His Majesty isn't going to, I don't think so." Now that Yan Xiaohan was holding Fu Shen's hand and looking at him, he slowly calmed down. He related every detail to his audience. Smart as Fu Shen was, he immediately understood his ideas. "I'm afraid His Majesty doesn't have much confidence in the princes. He wants to use you as a check on their highnesses." Their eyes met, their thoughts coinciding without prearrangement. Among the tens of thousands of wild threads, Fu Shen accurately grasped the central point. Why you? Okay, so we are at our last chapter for this book. I'm gonna finish my drink real quick. Oh. All right, our final chapter for the book. Then we'll move on to number 2 next week. Chapter 44. For Emperor Yuntai to entrust him with Beiyuan's military authority, not stint to make an exception to bringing him into the palace, even to treat him as the emperor's mouthpiece in Yinghua Hall, putting a check on the princes. This wasn't just putting him in an important position anymore. This was practically treating him as halfway to a member of the family. Fu Shen said suspiciously, "I suppose you're the one who's actually His Majesty's son?" Yan Xiaohan laughed in spite of himself, deliberately teasing him. If I really were His Majesty's son, there would be 2 princesses in the Fu family. Fu Shen was unamused. Yan Xiaohan picked up a pot and replenished his cup of tea. Removing his joking expression, he said, "Jing Yuan, do you know who the person His Majesty trusts most is?" Fu Shen answered without taking the time to think. Himself. Yan Xiaohan had meant to gravely and seriously give him a detailed analysis. Instead, Fu Shen's answer made him laugh. He distinctly felt the drab shadow cast over his heart by the past slowly fading. It seemed that in front of this person, the most colossal matters could be passed over with a laugh. And apart from himself, Yan Xiaohan said. Fu Shen really had no idea how to answer. With Emperor Yuntai's paranoia so severe, he didn't trust generals who held military power, didn't trust brothers who had blood ties to him, didn't trust his sons with their eyes on the throne, didn't trust civil officials secretly divided into camps. Thinking about it this way and that, he couldn't come up with a single candidate. Fu Shen pursed his lips, thinking to himself that Emperor Yuntai really was the solitary emperor in the flesh. Yan Xiaohan casually said, he trusts military officials over civil officials. He trusts those right under his nose over officers, commanding garrisons. So compared to you, he trusts me more. Fu Shen motioned, hitting him. Yan Xiaohan laughed and grabbed his hand, gently squeezing. The Feilong Guard and the North Yemen Imperial Guard have always been his secret weapon. After that are the 5 great capital barracks, because Wang Shen, the commander of the barracks, is a lone official who isn't part of any faction. The Imperial City's troops won't do. Then there's Commander Prince Zipeng. He hasn't made a peep over the years, hasn't shown off, has kept a low profile. His Majesty has more confidence in old ministers. Of course, none of these people he mentioned were unfamiliar to Fu Shen. In current talk, there were 4 pillars of state, which was to say, great shows, 4 most celebrated military officers who currently stood guard in various quarters. Specifically, these were the Beiyuan Cavalry Commander Fu Shen, Commander Prince Zipeng, Duan Guihong, the East Sea Navy's provincial commander, Sa Zimu. Zimu. And the capital barrack commander, Wang Shen. Wang Xin? Wang Shen. Wang Shen. We're just going to go with Wang Shen. Wang Shen had always been unassuming, even more so than Duan Guihong. The reason Commander Prince Zipeng's name wasn't well known in the capital was that he was located far away. It was hard for information to travel. Wang Shen was at the West Mountain Garrison not far from the capital. After so many years, he hadn't made any kind of stir. Many people only knew of the capital barracks. When the commander of the capital barracks was mentioned, they had to rack their brains for a while to come up with his name. But it was the Beiyuan Cavalry, the 5 great capital barracks, and the Imperial Guards who together constituted the 3 great defenses of the capital. So, Fu Shen asked, what are you trying to say? People who can obtain His Majesty's trust must not claim merit, must not join factions, must be unassuming in conduct, and it's best for them to be old ministers, smiling, Yan Xiaohan said. You still haven't thought of anyone? Fu Shen gave it up. Tell me. Yan Xiaohan said, a eunuch. Fu Shen's first reaction was to direct his gaze downward, glancing at Yan Xiaohan's lower body. No, you seem pretty normal and uncut. Yan Xiaohan was speechless. It took Fu Shen a moment to realize that his thoughts had gone astray. He was so embarrassed he covered his face with his hands. Yan Xiaohan held back his laughter, pulling him in front of himself by the arms of his wheelchair. The 2 of them were knee to knee. He said in deadly earnest, don't be embarrassed. We're an old married couple. What is there to be embarrassed about? Give me your hands. Lord Marquise, when are you planning to test out whether I'm normal or not? Fushen clenched his teeth and said, I'm planning to have you test out a discipline rod first. Yan Xiaohan laughed. Fushen held out for a while, then also couldn't resist laughing. Indecent scoundrel. We're talking about serious business. Get up. Do you still remember Duan Linglong? Yan Xiaohan had laughed enough, but he still kept hold of his hands, unwilling to let go. You haven't entered court then. You hadn't entered court then yet. You didn't witness how he could have his way. Now that was what you call being present in the emperor's mind, enjoying endless imperial favor. Eunuchs have no children and enter the palace when they're young. The only support they have is the emperor's favor and trust. So Duan Linglong was truly loyal to His Majesty. If you were to say that His Majesty has ever trusted someone with his whole heart and soul, then he would be only the one. Yan Xiaohan said. Perhaps no one would have believed me if I said this, but when Duan Linglong died, His Majesty did indeed shed tears for him. After I was born, I was abandoned at the gate of Wanxiang Temple. Wanxiang Temple belongs to the imperial family. It's full of consorts and concubines who have become nuns and spend all their time in company with oil lamps and old Buddhas. They took pity on me and were moved by compassion, so they took me into the temple to be fostered. Common people are not permitted to enter Wanxiang Temple. They guessed that perhaps some palace maid had an illegitimate child and worried that she wouldn't be able to raise me, but was unable to make up her mind to strangle me, so brought me to Wangxian Temple to leave my life and death up to fate. So I can't belong to the imperial bloodline. His Majesty trusts me is purely because my adoptive father was Duan Linglong. Fushen's heart tightened as he listened to this. He hesitated, then gently patted the back of his hand. Yan Xiaohan said, Duan Linglong was in love with one of the temple nuns and often secretly came to Wanxian Temple. He heard that the temple had picked up an abandoned baby, and since he couldn't have heirs, he acknowledged me as his adoptive son. I received his instruction for many years. My martial arts skills were also all passed on by him. This continued until I was 17, when he brought me into the Imperial Guard. Over the years, there were 2 points people had most castigated Yan Xiaohan for. First was his peculiar conduct and ruthless means. Second was the fact that he admitted a eunuch as his adoptive father, indicating that he was seeking connections with treacherous officials and harboring evil designs. Even though it had been a long time since Fushen had cared about the rumors around him, now he still couldn't help giving a regretful sigh of, I see. Not very tenderly, he pulled Yan Xiaohan into his arms, but he thought that anything he might say would seem feeble. All his feelings turned into inexpressible heartache. He wished he could return to the past and hug that still young and tender boy like this. Yan Xiaohan allowed himself to be hugged. Softly, he said, Don't pity me. Right. I'm not pitying you, I just want to hide you, Fushen said. Since I can't be a princess, then you'll have to behave and be the Marquise of Jinning's lady, all right? One of these days, someone's going to pick which one. Yan Xiaohan laughed soundlessly and continued. His Majesty already knew about Duan Linglong and that nun, and naturally he also knew about me. When Duan Linglong was seriously ill, he ordered me to swear an oath at his bedside never to have children and to serve my sovereign with all my heart. After his death, His Majesty promoted me to Imperial Investigator of the Feilong Guard. Though Yan Xiaohan didn't belong to the Imperial bloodline, The emperor had still more or less watched him grow up. His background had determined that he would naturally be isolated by civil officials. He was also the successor that Duan Long had personally educated. An out-and-out solitary and loyal official, a known quandary inside and out. Of course Emperor Yuntai would dare to confidently and boldly make use of him. "Why did you agree?" Fu Shen asked. "If you hadn't joined the Feilong Guard, you still could have lived very well. There are endless paths in this world. Why must you choose the hardest one to walk?" Yan Shouhan asked in turn. "The year the Eastern Tartars invaded the border, why did you choose to go into battle?" Fu Shen said, "You think I did it willingly? I was forced." Yan Shouhan was silent for a long time, then at last seemed to reach a decision. He opened his mouth and spoke with great difficulty. "There was a person. Perhaps I would never be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, but I could place him in my heart and watch him from afar, occasionally say a few words to him. That would also be good." Fu Shen didn't know what he was going to say next, but as if he had a premonition, his heart began to beat wildly and rapidly. But later he was forced to go to the northern front. Fu Shen's mind emptied. It seemed to be what he had expected, yet also entirely beyond expectation. Everyone knew that the fighting was dangerous, that it would mean going and not coming back. And of all the high-ranking officials at court, not one person stepped forward to block that fatal assignment for him, Yan Shouhan said. Only then did I learn how little weight the words of the lowly carry. I didn't even have the right to dream of what I couldn't have. He laughed in self-mockery. So infamy was all right, not having children wouldn't hurt. As long as I could climb upward, I would have agreed to anything. Don't speak of it. Fu Shen's chest undulated violently. He held him down, one-handed, and hoarsely said, "Yan Xiang, I know. Don't speak of it again. It's all right. It's all in the past." Yan Shouhan hugged him tenderly, stroking his back. "I only mentioned it because you brought it up. It was my own obstinate persistence to begin with. You don't need to pity me for it, and don't think you bear any responsibility. That I could reach where I am today proves that I didn't choose wrong back then. Had I known before..." Yan Shouhan imagined the scene. "Had you known, you probably would have gathered up a crowd of rich kids and beaten me to death on the spot." When they had brushed shoulders at the city gate, it had been a fleeting glimpse of beauty. He had casually tossed a twin lotus and drawn up a lifetime's desire and sweetness. The shared adversity between the cliff, the unforeseen squabble, the rupture, the reconciliation. For 7 years they had kept each other at arm's length, yet they had always been present, walking towards each other from distant, opposite ends. Though the road had been long, they had finally met. The closeness he had once thought he could hardly yearn for was now at last within his reach. "When you went to war, there was nothing I could do," comfortingly, Yan Shouhan said. "Fortunately, I later became the imperial investigator. When His Majesty was arranging a marriage for you, I was the first one he thought of. You see, this is what they call anything being obtainable with sincere conviction." After a brief silence, Fu Shen couldn't resist being earnest. "And if His Majesty hadn't arranged this marriage?" Looking at him, Yan Shouhan laughed. "Lord Marquis, I'm not your sort of upright gentleman. Since I was willing to put up a life-or-death struggle as imperial investigator, then even if His Majesty hadn't permitted it, I still would have carried you off. If the court's dog wasn't harming a loyal and upright subject, how would I be living up to all the rumors in the empire?" Hearing this, Fu Shen knew right away that he was talking nonsense, but his heart still ached. He tapped on his back. A total waste of a pretty face. How can you be so stubborn? Yan Xiaohan easily said. One look at you interfered with the rest of my life. What could I do? The words he hadn't said were all concealed in the gentleness of his regard when he smiled. Supposing that Emperor Yuntai hadn't arranged this marriage, however unprincipled Yan Xiaohan was, he probably still wouldn't have done something like carrying off the Marquise of Jinning by force. Perhaps they would have spent the rest of their lives pretending to be like fire and water, acting like strangers. One look at you interfered with the rest of my life. Fu Shen could interfere with his life, but he couldn't have interfered with Fu Shen's life. All right. Yan Xiaohan let him go and was just about to retreat when he suddenly paused, his collar seized out of nowhere. I'm really sorry for having interfered with the rest of your life. Fu Shen leaned back, relaxed, and the corners of his lips turning up. Magnanimously, he said, Come on, you can interfere back now. That is the end of part 1. I'm going to see if they have anything special. No. It's just the glossary. And the extra definitions. Yep. So that is the end of book 1. All right. So I will be doing the start of the second volume of Golden Terrace, which will look exactly like this on the little image. So you'll see this face, probably with just like 1, 2, 3. I might put like a little post-it note volume 2 just on the front of it so people aren't confused. That'll work. And we'll go from there. Oh, I know it's just one person still actively here, but I actually ended up getting something cool, and I think they're still doing it. So I got a package from a shop called Chapter 56, and I wanted to share because their art is absolutely phenomenal, and I've actually had their art on my screen of my phone for the Lan Wangji. So actually this print exactly, I've had this print exactly on my phone for like 2.5 years. So when I heard the artist actually was like releasing physical prints, I had to buy them. They're actually doing a tarot card set, like not sponsored. They're just amazing, and I wanted to show them off. So the Wei Wuxian Death, and then the Fool. So I appreciate that they actually have Scum Villain too. And then the Sun. Yeah, they're so pretty. They are so pretty. But yes, this has been my screensaver for like over 2 years. So I was like, yeah. And then here's their actual business card. Because they're amazing. So you can find them on Twitter and Instagram, I guess. I found them through Instagram. Well, I saw their art and I was like, oh, I know that art. They have some other stuff as well, but I just wanted to share because they're amazing. But yeah. So anyway, going back to volume 2. We will be doing it regular Tuesday, 8 o'clock. Yeah. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And stay healthy. I know it's getting warmer by me. I don't know how many other people it's warm by, but yeah, stay healthy. If it's beautiful out, I hope you guys get to enjoy it. And I will see you Tuesday for the beginning of Golden Terrace Volume 2. Good night.